Have you ever wondered why some writing advice leaves you more confused than when you started? Or maybe you've been stuck trying to figure out exactly what steps to take next in your writing journey? Either way, I've got something fun and super insightful for you. I created a free quiz that will help you discover your exact next steps to move forward with your novel in just 30 seconds. All you have to do is answer a few quick questions and then bam, you'll get a personalized roadmap tailored specifically to where you are in your writing journey right now. Plus, I'll send you a customized 10-episode podcast playlist, as well as additional resources specifically chosen for where you're at to help you start making lots of progress and get to that next big milestone, whether that's finishing your first draft, revising your novel, or publishing your book. So if you're curious, head over to savannahgilbo.com/quiz to take the quiz now. One more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/quiz to take the quiz and get a personalized roadmap tailored to where you're at in your writing, editing, or publishing journey. You can't state in one sentence exactly what a scene accomplishes and why it's important to your story, then that is a major red flag. The most powerful scenes are those that advance the plot, reveal character, and reinforce the theme all at once. So just a little helpful checklist as you go through each of your scenes. You'll want to polish your scenes for maximum impact in your third draft. Welcome to the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast. My name is Savannah Gilbo, and I'm here to help you write a story that works. I want to prove to you that writing a novel doesn't have to be overwhelming. So each week, I'll bring you a brand new episode with simple, actionable, and step-by-step strategies that you can implement in your writing right away. So whether you're brand new to writing or more of a seasoned author looking to improve your craft, this podcast is for you. So pick up a pen and let's get started. In today's episode, I'm sharing my 10-step process for turning your messy first draft into a manuscript you'll be proud to share. Now, if you're listening to this episode and you've just finished your first draft, congratulations are in order because this puts you ahead of many, many aspiring authors who never make it this far. So this is a huge accomplishment, and I hope you take some time to celebrate if you haven't already. Now, although finishing your first draft is really exciting, it can also be overwhelming and anxiety-inducing as well. Because at some point, most authors will find themselves looking at their manuscripts wondering, now what? What should I do next? And that's exactly what we're going to cover in today's episode. But before we get into those 10 steps, I want to talk about something really important. And that is before you dive into your revisions, I want you to take a break away from your manuscript. And the simple reason for this is that your manuscript needs time to settle in your mind. So I recommend stepping away for at least 2 weeks, preferably a month, because that will give you the mental distance necessary to return to your manuscript with fresh eyes. This will also allow you to approach your story as a reader rather than as the creator who knows every single plot twist and every character motivation by heart. So once you've given yourself that necessary breathing room, then it's time to get to work. So let's walk through 10 manageable steps that will help you go from messy first draft to a manuscript you're proud to share. And I want you to pay special attention to step 4 because it's arguably the most crucial part of the editing process that most writers skip. It's kind of like the secret weapon to making your revision process smoother rather than chaotic. So pay special attention to step 4. Also, I wanted to mention that we're going to cover a lot in today's episode. So I've created a free PDF guide of everything we're going to talk about today, all so that you don't have to take notes as you listen. You can grab this free guide at savannahgilbo.com/edit. So one more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/edit. This guide will be your companion as you turn your messy first draft into a story that you're proud of. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into step number 1. Step 1 is to shift your mindset from author to editor. Now, editing requires a completely different mindset than writing. So the very first step before you touch a single word is to get in the right headspace. When drafting your novel, you are creating. So you are letting ideas flow organically, getting to know your characters, and allowing your story to unfold on a scene-by-scene basis. Editing, however, is analytical. You're examining what you've created, determining what works and what doesn't work, and making strategic decisions about changes. A lot of writers struggle with this transition because they remain emotionally attached to their words. So they resist cutting beautiful passages that don't serve the story, or they hold on to characters that really need to be reimagined. But here's the thing that many first-time writers don't know. Great stories are made in revisions. And what I mean by that is that a brilliant idea that's poorly executed remains just that. So it's brilliant, but poorly executed. On the other hand, a solid idea that's expertly refined through editing can become something extraordinary. And if you consider the books that you love, they did not arrive in the world fully formed and perfect. They were sculpted through multiple rounds of feedback and careful revision. So the same is true for your book. Now, a little pro tip, something that can help in this stage of the process, is to create a physical ritual that helps you transition from writer to editor mode. So something as simple as changing your workspace, putting on your favorite playlist, or lighting a candle can signal to your brain that it's time to shift from writer to editor. Okay, so that is step 1, shift your mindset from author to editor. Step number 2 is to read your entire draft without making edits. So now that you have your editor's mindset in place, it's time to read your entire manuscript from start to finish, but with a catch. There is no editing allowed. And the reason I say this is because reading it without editing it will allow you to experience your story as a whole, much like your future readers will. And this type of perspective is going to reveal the forest instead of just the individual trees. Many major problems in novels aren't obvious when you're focused on the individual sentences or scenes, but they become really apparent when you experience the complete narrative flow. Now, this is a step that many first-time authors will want to skip, and they will just dive right into their edits too soon, fixing comma splices and reworking sentences and pulling out their thesaurus before they've even assessed their overall story, and this is a big mistake. It's this kind of piecemeal approach that will lead to wasted effort when you discover later on that entire sections of your story need to be cut or completely rewritten. So here is what I recommend doing. I want you to print out your manuscript if possible, or export it to a different format like a PDF or any kind of e-reader. The goal of changing formats like this is to make it as difficult as possible for you to edit as you go, and it forces you to simply experience the story as a reader would. Now, although I don't recommend editing while you read, I do recommend making note of your gut reactions. So where you're confused, where you're bored, excited, or emotionally moved, these are all great notes. And these instinctive responses are gold because they're exactly what your future readers will experience. Now, a little pro tip here is we don't want to just trust our memory for these gut reactions or any kind of notes we want to take, right? Again, the insights that you'll gain during this read-through are going to be easily forgotten if you don't capture them immediately. So a simple coding system like P for plot issues or C for character problems can help you organize your thoughts without interrupting your reading flow. If you're working with pen and paper, you can also use different colored highlighters or pens for this exercise as well. Okay, so that is step 2, read your entire draft without making edits. Step 3 is to create a reverse outline to map what you actually wrote. So with your completed read-through and your notes in hand, the next step is to create a reverse outline of your manuscript. And a reverse outline is exactly what it sounds like. A scene-by-scene outline of your entire story created after you've written it. So think of it like outlining in reverse. Now, unlike the outline you might have created before writing, if you even outlined at all, a reverse outline reflects exactly what you wrote in your draft. And this step is important because it helps to reveal the true structure of your story rather than the one that you intended or imagined. Because here's the thing, even the most detailed plotters discover their stories evolved during drafting, and often in ways they didn't consciously recognize. So a reverse outline will expose these changes for better or for worse. Now, here's an example of what I mean. A few years ago, I worked with a mystery author who couldn't figure out how to make her story work the way she wanted it to. She had enlisted the help of several beta readers, and although they thought her plot was entertaining and her characters were well written, they felt like the big reveal came out of nowhere at the end. So the first thing I had her do when we started working together was to create a reverse outline of her story. And then I asked her to track the clues and red herrings throughout that outline. So what she discovered is that there was a gap of about 200 pages between where the clue was first mentioned and the big reveal. And she hadn't been able to identify this issue before because she was so in the weeds of her story. And this is something I see happen all the time, but especially with first-time authors. And this is why reverse outlines are so powerful. They reveal things you can't see because you're too close to your story. So here's what I want you to do. When creating your reverse outline, focus on capturing what each chapter or scene actually accomplishes rather than what you intended it to do. You might be surprised at all the disconnects that you discover. Now, a little pro tip is that a reverse outline does not have to be complicated. Even just jotting down the main purpose of each scene on an index card can reveal structural issues that might otherwise have taken months to identify. Remember that the goal is to see your story from above, like more of that 10,000-foot view, and not to create more work for yourself. So you can keep it simple. It does not have to be complicated. All right, so that is step number 3, create a reverse outline to map what you actually wrote. Step number 4 is to create your strategic revision plan. So now that you have a reverse outline of your entire story, and now that you've identified the actual structure and progression of the draft you've written, it's time to create a strategic plan for executing your revisions. Now, editing without a plan is like renovating a house by randomly tearing down walls without considering the overall structure. You might fix one issue while creating 3 new ones. But a strategic approach ensures that your changes enhance the whole thing rather than just patching individual problems. So in my Notes to Novel course, I teach students to focus on different things at different times. And here's exactly what I recommend. Story level issues come first, so you want to fix the foundation before decorating the rooms. Scene level issues come next, so you want to make sure that each brick is solid before polishing it. And then page level issues come last. And that's because there's no point in perfecting prose that might later get cut. Now, attempting to edit without this kind of plan or without addressing the big picture issue first is the single biggest mistake I see writers make. They spend weeks perfecting sentences in chapters that ultimately need to be completely rewritten or cut, so don't let this be you. Now, a little pro tip here, you can look for changes that will create a sort of ripple effect throughout your manuscript, aka the changes that will naturally cascade and fix multiple issues at once. For example, implementing a change to your protagonist's motivation can fix dozens of scenes that previously felt off, but you couldn't figure out why. Okay, so that is step number 4, create your strategic revision plan. All right, step number 5 is to execute the big picture story level edits for your second draft. So now that you have a detailed revision plan, this essentially becomes your roadmap as you tackle the first and most critical phase of editing, addressing the big picture story level concerns in your second draft. Think of these big picture edits as adjusting the foundation and framework of a house. If these elements aren't solid, then no amount of decorating or fine finishing work will make the structure sound. So to get started, consider the following questions. Number 1, does my plot create genuine momentum from beginning to end? Number 2, do my characters have clear, consistent motivations driving their actions? Number 3, what is my story really about beneath the surface of the plot? Number 4, are the stakes high enough to keep readers invested? And number 5, is the central conflict in my story clear and expressed on the page? Now, during this editing phase, you'll be making the biggest and most impactful changes to your manuscript. Because of that, this is also where you'll spend most of your editing time and energy, and I want you to know that's completely normal. You'll also need to have the courage to make big, bold changes that might feel terrifying, but will ultimately elevate your story from good to great. So hang in there, and whatever you do, don't skip this step. Now, a little pro tip, don't try to fix everything at once. The most successful authors I know and have worked with do multiple focused passes through their manuscripts. One for things like character arcs, another for plot structure, and things like that. This kind of targeted approach will help prevent overwhelm and ensure that nothing slips through the cracks. Okay, so that's step number 5. You want to execute the big picture story level edits for your second draft. Now, step number 6 is to get fresh eyes on your manuscript. So after completing your second draft with those foundational story level changes in place, you've reached a really important milestone and a crucial limitation. No matter how skilled or experienced you are, your intimate knowledge of your story creates inevitable blind spots. And this is why you need to get outside feedback on your story before moving forward. As the creator of your story, you're never going to be able to fully experience it the way a reader will. You know the character's secret motivations, the plot twists before they happen, and the backstory that isn't on the page. This intimate knowledge makes it impossible for you to judge your manuscript with complete objectivity. As an example, I once worked with an author who was convinced her protagonist was sympathetic and relatable, but every beta reader found the character selfish and unlikable. And this feedback, while it was initially painful, it allowed her to make crucial character adjustments that really transformed readers' experience of her novel and her protagonist. So once you get to this stage, getting outside feedback can help you identify issues that you'll never spot on your own, while also confirming the strengths that you might be uncertain about. And you really have two main options for gathering feedback. Number one is that you can work with a developmental editor. A professional developmental editor specializes in big picture story elements. They'll provide objective, expert feedback on your plot, character, structure, and theme, and in some cases will even help you make a plan for moving forward. Now, while this is an investment, it can save you countless hours of revision by identifying issues that you might never spot on your own. Okay, so option one, work with a developmental editor. Option two is to work with beta readers. Now, beta readers are people who will read your manuscript and provide feedback from a reader's perspective. And your ideal beta readers are people who are familiar with your genre, are honest but constructive with their feedback, are specific in their feedback, and who are reliable about deadlines. Okay, so that is option two. You can work with beta readers on your story, and I'm going to link to a past episode about working with beta readers in the show notes of this episode. Now, a little pro tip here is that you can create a specific feedback questionnaire for your beta readers rather than just asking them for general impressions. So you can include questions that target areas that you're particularly concerned about, but also a nice mix of maybe some open-ended questions that might reveal issues you hadn't considered. This kind of multi-layered structural approach ensures that you're going to get actionable feedback rather than just vague opinions. Okay, so that is step 6, get fresh eyes on your manuscript. Now, step 7 is to strategically incorporate feedback into your revision plan. So assuming you have editor and or beta reader feedback in hand, it's time to evaluate and integrate these insights into your next round of revisions. And this isn't about just blindly accepting every suggestion. It's more about learning to see your work through others' eyes and then making informed decisions about any changes you want to make. So the key here is to sort and prioritize what you've received. And I recommend thinking about this in terms of 4 buckets. So bucket number 1 are issues you must address, and these are problems that multiple people identified. The second bucket is things you should consider. So these are issues that would probably strengthen your story if you implemented them. In the third bucket, you'll have things that you might implement. So these are suggestions that could enhance certain elements, but you're not really sure if you want to make these changes or not. And then in bucket number 4, you'll have things that you just don't want to change. So maybe this is full of feedback that conflicts with your vision for your story or just things that really didn't hit the mark. Okay, so I definitely recommend sorting and prioritizing the feedback you've received. Now, this stage often causes a lot of anxiety. So you might get feedback and you might feel defensive about the criticisms or overwhelmed by the volume of suggested changes. And either way, just remember that you remain the ultimate authority on your story. So feedback is a tool, it's not a mandate, okay? And then when it comes time to incorporate feedback, focus on understanding what the underlying issue is rather than the specific solution suggested. So for example, a beta reader might say your protagonist is unlikable. That's the problem, right? And they might suggest just making them nicer. That is a solution, but it might not be the right solution for your story. However, it is an issue worth considering nonetheless. Have you been dreaming of writing a novel, but you don't know where to start? Or maybe you've tried writing, but you keep getting stuck halfway through a draft? If so, I have a free training you're going to love. It's called 3 Things You Need to Write Your Novel in 2025, and in this free 60-minute training, I'll share the exact same process my clients and students have used to go from idea to completed manuscript in just months, not years. You'll also learn why most writers never finish their drafts, and spoiler alert, it's not a lack of talent or good ideas, as well as how to overcome feelings of perfectionism, self-doubt, and overwhelm that stops many new writers in their tracks. You can register for this free training at savannahgilbo.com/masterclass. So one more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/masterclass to register for the free training. I hope to see you there. Now, a little pro tip here, if you need help interpreting feedback or deciding what feedback you'll take action on, this is where a book coach can really come in handy. And a book coach is someone who can help you sort through this feedback, make a plan, and then stay accountable to your goals as you work through revisions. Now, the last little thing I want to say here is that at this point, the feedback you've integrated should have strengthened your story's foundation in a way that your overarching plot and your character development works. But you might find that there's still some work to be done on the big picture, and that's okay. You can take as much time as you need here, and don't be afraid to repeat steps 5 through 7 as many times as you need to before moving on. Okay, so that is step 7, strategically incorporate feedback into your revision plan. Now, step number 8 is to polish your scenes for maximum impact in your third draft. So at this stage, your story should work on the big picture level, and in this next round of revisions, you're going to focus on and examine the building blocks of your story, which are the individual scenes. So this is where you'll ensure each scene works both as a compelling single unit on its own, as well as a vital piece of your overarching story. And unlike story-level editing, which builds the foundation of your story, scene-level editing transforms a structurally sound manuscript into an emotionally engaging experience for the readers. So we're taking all the hard work you've done already and just making your story even better. And here's the thing. You could have a story that has a strong plot overall, but if it's full of weak scenes, readers are probably going to abandon it halfway through or even earlier. But when done properly, this editing phase helps you create that unputdownable quality that readers crave. So again, you might have really great characters and a compelling plot overall, but readers encounter your story scene by scene. So if these critical pieces of your story fall flat, readers aren't going to stick around regardless of how strong your premise is. So what this means is that every scene in your novel should earn its place by serving multiple purposes simultaneously. If a scene only does one thing, like deliver information, it's probably going to feel flat to readers. So the question isn't just, does this scene work? But it's more like, does this scene work hard enough for your story? Okay, so let me give you an example. I once worked with an author whose manuscript had a really compelling plot but felt emotionally distant. And during scene-level editing, we discovered 2 things. Number 1, she was ending her scenes way too early, so right after the action, but before that emotional impact could register. And then number 2, there was hardly any interiority throughout each scene. And adding interiority or her character's thoughts and feelings into every single scene and adjusting where her scenes ended to include brief emotional beats really transformed the overall reading experience and made her story so much stronger. Now, a little pro tip, if you can't state in one sentence exactly what a scene accomplishes and why it's important to your story, then that is a major red flag. The most powerful scenes are those that advance the plot, reveal character, and reinforce the theme all at once. So just a little helpful checklist as you go through each of your scenes. All right, so that is step number 8. You'll want to polish your scenes for maximum impact in your third draft. Now, step number 9 is to perfect your prose in your fourth draft. So having shaped your scenes into effective story components, your fourth draft brings you to the most granular level of editing, perfecting your prose. This is where you're going to bring your full attention to the line-by-line craft elements that make your writing shine at the sentence level. So precise word choice, elegant sentence structures, and the rhythmic flow of well-crafted paragraphs. In other words, this is your chance to unleash your unique voice and bring crystal clear clarity to your ideas. I know a lot of writers who find this stage the most satisfying because it's where manuscripts often transform from good story with adequate writing to good story with excellent writing. However, it's also where perfectionism can cause you to get stuck and keep you in this spiral of endlessly polishing the same paragraphs and passages over and over. So just something to keep a lookout for. Now, a little pro tip, if you want to instantly improve your prose, something that can really help is to read your work out loud. And that's because your ears will catch issues that your eyes miss every single time. Awkward phrasing, repetitive words, and unnatural dialogue become super obvious when spoken out loud. Okay, so just a little pro tip, and that is step number 9. You want to perfect your prose in your 4th draft. Now, step number 10 is to choose your publishing path and execute your final polishing steps. So after refining your manuscript through multiple drafts, you've reached a really significant decision point, determining your publishing path. And this decision carries particular weight because publishing isn't just about getting your book out into the world. It's about finding the right way to connect your story with readers. And the publishing path that you choose should align with your specific goals and the type of book you've written. But here's what many first-time writers don't know. The publishing path that you choose will also determine what additional editing steps you'll need to take from this point forward. So let's break that down into 2 main options that you're going to take from this point. If you're pursuing traditional publishing, you might be ready to begin querying literary agents after completing the page-level edits we just went over in step 9. If you choose to take this path, you're going to need a polished manuscript, a compelling query letter, and a synopsis. If an agent signs you and sells your book to a publisher, your manuscript will undergo additional rounds of editing with a professional editor at the publishing house. That publisher will typically handle developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, and proofreading as a part of their process. In this scenario, you will not need to invest in these additional editing services yourself. Okay, so that is if you're going the traditional publishing route. Now, if you're self-publishing, this is going to require you to manage and invest in several additional editing stages. So number 1 is line editing, and a line editor will help you refine your prose, improve flow, and enhance your unique voice while maintaining clarity and readability. Number 2 is copy editing, and a copy editor will correct your grammar, punctuation, and spelling and ensure consistency in style. So things like character names, timeline, formatting, etc. And then number 3 is proofreading. So this is that final polish before publication, which helps you catch any remaining typos or formatting issues that slip through earlier rounds of editing. Okay, so if you're going the self-publishing route, just know that this option is going to require you to, again, manage and invest in several additional editing stages. Now, a little pro tip. The publishing landscape has transformed dramatically in recent years, creating more opportunities and more confusion than ever before. What worked for authors 5 years ago might not be the best strategy today, and especially might not be the best strategy for you. So do your research before committing to any publishing path, and remember that the right publishing path for you should align with your goals and the type of book you've written. All right, so that is step number 10. Choose your publishing path and then execute the final polishing steps according to the path you've chosen. Now, before I let you go, I want to remind you about a few things. Number 1 is that there's a PDF guide of everything we talked about in today's episode, all ready for you so that you don't have to take notes or re-listen to this episode a bunch of times. You can get your hands on that at savannahgilbo.com/edit. It's totally free, and I will email a copy straight to your inbox. So one more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/edit. Now, the second thing I want to tell you is that the 10 steps we just went over, let those become your roadmap for navigating the complex journey of editing your messy draft. I know at this point, if you're about to edit your manuscript, you might feel excited and also very overwhelmed. Just remember that almost every single author who has ever published a book has stood where you're standing now, staring at a first draft and wondering how to make it into something truly special. The 10 steps that we went through today give you a roadmap to follow that breaks down the overwhelming task of editing a novel into smaller, more manageable pieces. And each step builds on the one before it, guiding you through the process from start to finish. Above all, just remember to be patient with yourself and trust the process. Some days are going to bring really cool breakthroughs, and others will feel like you're taking steps backwards. This does not mean there's anything wrong with you or your story. It's just how the editing process goes. So take a deep breath, schedule that first break away from your manuscript, and prepare for the rewarding work of turning your draft into the book it's meant to be. So that's it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and for showing your support. If you want to check out any of the links I mentioned in this episode, you can find them in the show notes listed in the description of each episode inside your podcast player or at savannahgilbo.com/podcast. If you're an Apple user, I'd really appreciate it if you took a few seconds to leave a rating and a review. Your ratings and reviews tell Apple that this is a podcast that's worth listening to. And in turn, your reviews will help this podcast get in front of more fiction writers just like you. And while you're there, go ahead and hit that follow button because there's going to be another brand new episode next week full of actionable tips, tools, and strategies to help you become a better writer. So I'll see you next week, and until then, happy writing.